Hello, I'm Brabazon, and on this early, eerie morning, I welcome you to the Post 82 Career Preparation and Career Change. This is the beginning of a series for us, and a series that's had so many requests, hundreds of requests from you as we started the posts once more. What you've asked of me is to provide some help to move you from a PhD into an early career researcher or postdoc phase, but also to move you outside of the university system because you think there's no hope for it, but also colleagues that have been retrenched or rendered redundant from their academic job, or people that just want to have an understanding of what's available and how to create change in your working life. Well, it's my absolute pleasure to provide that information for you in a series. And we start with career preparation and career change. And can I say, I've read some of the most interesting material I think I've read in 10 years to provide this post for you today. And there's no doubt that this series is timely. It's a weird time. And work tends to be a proxy for weird and complicated times. It dances with the complexity of our economic and political environment, and there's no doubt that's what's happening at the moment. We're going to apply one of my old maxims today and through this series, and that is, we can only control what we can control. We can only control what we can control. So this series, and particularly our gig today, is about understanding what we can control and make concrete decisions and changes in our lives in response to what we can control. So in these tough times, let's focus on what we can do to create change in ourselves, to create an interface of employability. But most importantly, what I'm trying to do is get us out of a desperation mindset, if you will. I want you to apply for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs, and I want you to have a choice of the job that you select. We're going to include, obviously there's some great research in this area, and I'm using a lot of, the weird thing is I'm using research from the last 125 years, unbelievably enough, but I'm also making sure there's a strong slice of literature post the pandemic, because our very understanding of work in our identity has transformed. And yes, you will hear some of my horror stories, and there are so many of them. I have made so many mistakes. But the reason I'm telling you these stories is not to create fear or worry in you. In fact, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm telling you these horrific stories so that you've heard them before. So if something occurs, a refrain happens through an application process where you think, oh, that's a bit of a concern. I want you to have heard the problem before so that you're not just bouncing around like a pinball wizard, okay? I need you to know when something bad happens that you can immediately enact a diagnostic in response to it. So what I want to do for us is create narratives and create trajectories so that you can see your future and you can make decisions and configure actions to walk yourself to that future. I want as much autonomy as I can give you in these really messed up times. So today is the setup post. We are preparing you to put in place some applications. So we're not at the application phase yet. What I'm trying to do is configure personal preparation, but also professional preparation. I'm getting you ready to enter the battle with late capitalism. And it is a battle, and I am preparing you to be tough, be ready, and be prepared. And we need to recognise that you're going to be battling with a lot of people for every single job. It may be 10, 20, 30, 50. It may be hundreds, and indeed in some big jobs, thousands of applications. And you are also, what makes this time quite complicated is that you are being hired by incompetent or mediocre leaders. There's some great leaders out there, but there is a group, a cluster of mediocre and incompetent leaders. And when they enact an appointment process, it's very messy, because that group are either giving jobs to their mates, they're enacting the Peter principle, so they're hiring people who will not show them up, or perhaps the most frighteningly, they're hiring people who will do their job for them and will go under a bus, will fall under a bus when something goes wrong. They'll take all the blame when something goes wrong in an organisation with bad leadership. So that's our culture at the moment. And we will never know how many jobs are just never advertised, are just given to somebody, and we'll never know how many jobs are advertised but they're already filled. How many jobs are being advertised by line managers who have no idea what they're doing? And I've been doing an analysis of job applications at the moment, and what I find amazing is when the responsibilities or the role is being described and listed, the weirdest stuff is there. So in other words, they don't know what they want in the job, so they're putting this laundry list of stuff together as roles and responsibilities because they don't know what they're after. So if they don't know what they're after, how are you going to do an application to fulfill that brief? So today we're enacting the preparation to get you personally and professionally ready, not for a single application. That's not what I want for you. I want you to put in 10 applications. I want you to put in 20 applications and invest in every single one of them and be excited and give it your best. But the reason we are spreading out to provide all these applications is I want you to have a choice. I never want you to be backed in a corner and desperate and having to select a really, really destructive, appalling job. We're going to, through the series, go through the creation of applications. We're going to go through interview screening, interviews, the weird stuff they make you do around the interview, making decisions, but also planning careers once you're in a post. So this is basically the whole suite. You've asked for the whole suite, and that's what I'm going to deliver for you in order. So we're going to do a lot, and as a community, I want us to do this as a family. We always do everything as a community, and it includes what we're going to be doing in this series. So let's start with career preparation and career change. There's going to be a lot of questions for you through this post too, because this is about you, where you are now and where you want to be. And I know a lot of you listen to rather than watch these posts while you're going for a walk, or you watch me at the gym. I'm so sorry, but you're in that reflexive space, or you're listening during a commute. That's great. You're in a reflexive space. So when I'm asking these questions, really do, you might want to pause the sound or pause the video and answer the question in your own mind. Our goal is to help each other make decisions in really difficult times. Now, before the 20th century, who we were, our abilities, our interests, weren't terribly relevant to the job search. Before the 20th century, our work was determined by where we live, our gender, our class, and our educational level, which of course was highly circumscribed by class way a century before the widening participation agenda. So work before the 20th century was about getting an income to survive, full stop. So what you felt like doing was really irrelevant. But Through the post-industrial economy, particularly after the Second World War, the knowledge economy and the proliferation of tertiary education, higher education and higher education providers, the choices and the pathways and the trajectories became more diverse, particularly for the working class, particularly for citizens of colour, and particularly for women. But through all of this expansion of opportunities and trajectories and choices, there was also a proliferation of cronyism, the Peter Principle, and bullying. So getting the people that they wanted in those positions in the workplace. We're going to start our discussion with how you make a decision about what is your occupation, your job, or the position that you're interested in. And I want to provide a shape for that decision making. And this is termed Holland's hexagon. Let me say that again, Holland's hexagon. Now you may have heard of it. It is pretty famous. It is a structure and it is a shape that was created by a former psychologist, a former professor of sociology at Johns Hopkins University, and his name was John Holland. And he offered a hexagon to try and shape who we are and our interests, and to align that into a working environment. Now, he configured in his hexagon 6 individual types, 6 types of people and clustered abilities. And those 6 types were realistic, investigative, artistic, cool, social, enterprising, and conventional. Okay. Now, all taxonomies reify. So I know that all always sounds a little bit like a horoscope, and maybe it sort of is. But all taxonomies are interesting and carry a history and a sociology with them. So we all take, and all of us through our lives have taken truly dreadful jobs and done those dreadful jobs in desperation. But before we back ourselves into what I'm describing as desperation corner, let's probe Holland's key trope, which was congruence. We're going to look at congruence as an analytical tool to enable our decision making. The argument is congruence creates job satisfaction. So let's go through the taxonomy and see if you can recognize yourself here. So investigative. They're the crew that enjoy maths, enjoy science, are very comfortable with theories and how theories move. That's investigative. Artistic, enjoy creativity, enjoy self-expression, but they also tend to be the self-starters and don't like micromanagement too much. Then we have the realistic crew. Brilliant. They are mechanical in nature. They enjoy puzzles. They enjoy working with tools. Incredibly high physicality and corporeal literacy. Brilliant. Then we have the conventional. They welcome the structures, the policies, and the procedures. They enjoy a routine. They are outstanding followers and they follow direction well. Very special group of people. Yeah. And then we have the enterprising crew. These are interesting. They enjoy hierarchy. They enjoy leading. They enjoy delegation. And they're very good. Their great gift is to see the whole picture of a situation. Then we have the social. They enjoy the supporting, the teaching, and the advising. They enjoy service roles and they enjoy service functions. Great. So while this does seem a bit like a horoscope, I know that, I think there is something important about recognizing where you are comfortable, who you are. And of course, a lot of us have bits in the different components of the hexagon. I use the hexagon when I'm trying to help people as a developmental plan, but I also use it as a diagnostic, because where you are comfortable is often where your current skills, experience and expertise are located. But from here, you see, okay, you've done that, that's who you are, that's great. But what are your goals? How are you wanting to move those skills and abilities? And if you look at over there what your goals and your trajectories are, great. What skills do you need to move from where you are now in the hexagon to where you want to be? And that gap is a very interesting gap, and about 125 years of history and theory has attempted to fill that gap. And that 125 years of fulfilling the gap between who we are and who we want to be in the workplace, that gap has been filled by a wonderful, remarkable man called Frank Parsons. His name is rarely used these days, but interesting guy. We made you one of our big posts, I think, on him. He's remarkable. Very difficult to find his work. I've had to really scratch around to read his work in the last few weeks. But remarkable man. He was an attorney, but he was also a social activist, and particularly focused on rights and social justice for migrants and migrants in the workplace. But he also had changed careers. Early in his career, he was a teacher. And he's often known as the father of career guidance, the father of career counselling, the father of career coaching. And what he did, what was so brilliant is, remember, 125 years ago, he created a methodology. And by the way, this was published in a posthumous book. So he did all this work. He died. And then a book was produced with this methodology. So what was this methodology? It has 3 stages. Firstly, 1, the necessity to understand the self. So understand our abilities, our interests, our strengths, our weaknesses. Great. Understand the self. Stage 2. Gain knowledge about the various types of work or positions or occupations you would like to do. Gain granular knowledge about these areas of the workplace. And 3, apply what Parsons described as, quote, true reasoning, end of quote. And what true reasoning did was link who you are now with what is going to be required in the workplace of your choice. Now, I know all of this seems pretty straightforward, but when you actually think about it, this is the granular information we require right now to sort ourselves out. What can you do now? And what are you going to need to be able to do to get the job over there that you're interested in? Great stuff. So this allows you to think about, what's your preference for a workplace? Do you want to work in a university? Do you want to work outside of a university? Do you want to work in the diversity of industries? Well, which industry? Do you want to work in mining? Do you want to work in the glams? Do you want part-time work? Do you want full-time work? Getting a real granular sense of the areas, the industries in which you are interested. Now, the key with that is then consider the gap. What do you need to do to be able to get into those jobs that you're interested in? So that's what we're going to do for the rest of this post. We're going to fill in this gap. And we're going to create a system or a program to work out the bits of the gap and how we fill those gaps. And we're going to be productive. I'm not just going to have a sit on a rock and go, how do I feel about myself? We don't do that stuff here. I'm going to do something productive for us that is going to give us a diagnostic tool, but is not going to waste a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on your CV. Now, there are 3 types of CVs, and we rarely talk about this, and we need to. There are 3 types of CVs, and increasingly, because of the differentiation of post-Fordism, different jobs require different types of CVs. So what we're doing today is we're constructing a master or a mistress CV. And then what we're going to do, once we've got this big document, you'll have it forever, you'll add to it forever, it's your big document. And then what we do is we're going to create 3 remixes from that original record. Now, the first type of CV, the first remix, is the chronological CV. This is the most commonly used CV. It lists your work experience, your publications, your teaching, everything in reverse, and your degrees in reverse chronological order. Right, so that means the most recent stuff is first and then you go down. Experienced employers really like chronological CVs, and I'll tell you why. We know what we're after. So we go into the CV, we know what we're after. If it's not there, that applicant is discarded. So I'll give you an example in university workplaces. If I need someone to have got a PhD, so we just start, you've got to have a PhD. If I go in and I say, PhD current or PhD under examination, that application is gone because I require someone with a PhD. So a decision is made in 10 seconds, okay? So experienced employers really like chronological CVs because we know what we're after and we are looking for it. Okay, now this therefore is the dominant choice for most employers. It's very, very easy to construct a chronological CV if you have a solid work history. So if you're old like me, very straightforward CV, very long, very interesting, lots of stuff going on, great. But you see, for younger colleagues or more junior colleagues, particularly just out of a PhD program, a chronological CV is a bit of a nightmare because all you see are the gaps. It's going to appear thin, it's going to appear short, and that's okay. We're coming up with solutions today to start to fill those gaps. Remember, this is a lifelong project that we're doing here. Okay, there's also another type of CV that's important to know about. This is the functional CV. This mode of CV takes particular modes of experience and translates them into skills. Let me explain what that means. So you've got in this particular CV headings that are skills. So web design, research, management, writing skills, cross-cultural communication. So you list skills and then the experiences go underneath those skills. Now, interesting. So a functional CV is a really good choice for people who are moving from one career to another. So for all the crew out there who have done their PhD and they go, I am never setting foot into a university ever again. Good on you, team. Bless you. So, team, what you need to do is for a little while, do a functional CV. Show how the skills you gained in a doctoral program can be translated into other industries. That is a functional CV. But, huge caveat here. You need to be aware that functional CVs can also be viewed with suspicion because they're used by people intentionally with a weakness or a gap in their resume, okay? It may be unavoidable. Know it exists. It's a great form of CV. It's very well known, but for old experienced dogs like me, when I see it, I go, right, what's the gap? What's the problem? But I'm old, I'm close to death, and other people will be hiring you. Now, the third option, I think, is the best one, the Goldilocks just right. This is called the combination CV or the hybrid CV. Now, notice the price here. The hybrid CV is a combination of the chronological and the functional. And what happens is at the start of it, you list the skills that you hold. So, web design, research, cross-cultural communication. So you list that and you list the experience that you have that verifies those skills. But in the second half of the CV, it moves to the more conventional chronological mode. So you actually talk about here are the jobs and things that I've done in reverse chronological order. Now, that's a good option if you've got gaps, right? Because it fills out your career and it allows you to, go, that's a gap, and start to fill it. And at a certain point, it is the transitional CV to move you back to the chronological CV. Okay, so as you can see, you need to cut the CV for the different types of work that you are undertaking, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm using the CV, this master CV, as a diagnostic, right? But what you do in every single, and we'll talk about this in a sec, in every single job that you're going to be applying for, I need you to cut the CV and save it in a different way. Never have a PDF CV, go, oh, just send the CV. Never do that. Cut it, bespoke, customized for particular jobs. So let's do the headings though for our master or mistress CV. So let's just get this big document, the big chunky one, in place. Now the first page of the master CV is a biography. It is in prose, complete sentences, complete paragraphs. One page that tells your career story. Tara Brabazon is, so third person, Tara Brabazon is, roles, qualification. This is your career show reel. This is the best of you in a one-page document in prose, okay? Biography, bang, thanks for playing. Now, we're going to get, so we're on page 2. Now we're going to get into the headings. The first set of headings are how these people can find you. So your contact details. And let's start with a professional email address, a phone number or phone numbers, your LinkedIn, Google Scholar and Orchid profile. So keep them current because they're going to be linking out of this CV. And by the way, use hypertext links these days. Link out of the CV all the time so they can click and see your work. You also need to put your nationality. That's one of those deal breaker things. So for example, I am an Australian with British indefinite leave to remain, currently resident in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Life is complicated, but nationality is a deal breaker. So if you apply for a Canadian job and they only want Canadian nationals, they're not going to give you that job. So put in the nationality, and that's one of those deal breaker issues, okay? Now, I don't list my residential address because there are weirdos out there, can you imagine? But list the town or even the suburb in which you are currently living. Okay, great. So they're your contact details. They need to find you because you're fabulous. They can find you. Now we move, next heading, to the qualifications. List your degrees. Now in this case, the most senior degrees are first. So the PhD for the rest of your life will be at the top of this list. Now, for many of you, including me, the PhD is not a terminating degree, but it is the most senior, so always leave it at the top. And again, it's one of those deal breakers. They need someone with a PhD. It's there. Thanks for playing. We'll keep reading the rest of the document. Then we're at the jobs. The jobs you have undertaken, and list them in reverse chronological order, the most recent first. Now, don't be concerned about this. They can be a university tutor, a university demonstrator. They can be diverse. They're showing another human that you've done work, you've got a good research ethic, you've got a good work ethic, and everything you've ever done in the working environment, list. Remember, this is your master CV. You will make cuts to it, but your entire working life, list at this point. Right. Then now we have some choices to make. For those of you that are watching this that are more junior, so you're in a PhD, you're in a master's degree, you're an early career researcher, your next section will be teaching. Okay? And you're listing your teaching experience first. Now, it's absolutely fine to list functions, okay? So the lecturing you've done, the tutoring you've done, your seminar leadership, your online fora coordination. All of this is great. Again, remember, universities run on teaching. Teaching pays our bills. And we are hiring people most of the time to do the teaching under very difficult circumstances. So we need to know, can you lecture? Can I throw you in front of 300 people and you'll be able to do it? Can you run an online forum of 300 people? Can you do it? That's what you're listing here. So for our junior crew, the teaching goes right at the front of your CV. Then you go into your research. Right, teaching first. Let's go into the caveats. If you're aiming for a postdoc, so particularly for our crew in the experimental sciences, you bring the research first and the teaching trails. For our mid-career crew, basically from about 8 years after your PhD, about mid-career, you should be moving the research ahead of the teaching. Okay, doesn't mean teaching is not important, but they'll be expecting to see some research. Right, so let's now get to research. And research has a series of very important subheadings. Books first, book chapters, refereed articles, refereed conference presentations. Then we might be going to journalism, then nitros. Remember, nitros are now, posters in there as well. Nitros are always incredibly important. Now, ORCID is now listing nitros. So if you have recorded videos, video abstracts, podcasts and so forth, please put those in your CV under the heading nitros. Now, there are intentionally a lot of headings there, and depending on your career stage, there may be headings that have nothing under them at this point. That's cool, that's a gap, we work to finish them. So after all your research has been presented in these headings, here comes the crunchy bit. This is the trick for punters. Next heading, research under review. This is crucial, and let me tell you why. This is the research that you've already written and it is under review, and you're listing the title, the journal that it's under review in, right? That level of detail. This is important for employers. Let me tell you why. We need to see that you are research active. We need to see what happens so often is we hire somebody and there's no research for a year or two, right? We need to see research under review so we know that you're going to arrive and research is going to emerge during your new role, right? Very, very important. Now, after that heading, research currently being written. Okay, this is the research that you're currently writing. Put the headings, put the titles in. Now for all our whiteboard soiree crew, hello. This is the first third of your whiteboard. So everything that's on the first third of your whiteboard goes in currently being written as a heading. Again, this is showing that you're an active researcher. It's showing you're a self-starter. You don't need all sorts of support. You are ready to go. You are ready to hit the ground running. Now, a person that's hiring you is not only hiring you for your past, which is what a CV shows, they're hiring you for your present and what you can do for them in the future. So those last two headings are a proxy of your research development in the new role. And can I say, just personally, having those headings, which I've had since I was 21, it's a great way for you to maintain control of your research. So where is stuff? Right, so you send it out to a journal, there's the name of the journal, and it stays there until either they accept it or you send it to somewhere else. And you really get a sense of somebody's activity. So for example, at the moment, I have 10 refereed articles under review, okay? So every day is a bit frightening, like what's going to arrive in the email, right? So I have 10 under review. So people know a lot's happening, right? A lot's happening. Great stuff. So we've done our teaching, we've done our research, absolutely pivotal, well done. Then we're going to grants and funding, and what I'd say for our early career researchers, combine grants and funding with awards and prizes. Okay, there will be a point where you'll snap them in half, and so your nice little awards and stuff will be their own heading, but you probably haven't got enough grants and funding to make it a real legitimate category. Okay, again, this may start minimally. You might have got a prize and they gave you $50 with it. Put that down. Put that down. You're building, okay? And know that this category will develop through time. And there will be a point, as I've said, where suddenly you've gone, all right, there's enough grants and funding now for that to be its own category, and you cleave away the prizes and the awards into their own. Okay, we're winning. We're moving through this CV. Your next heading is administration, management, and leadership. So this is where you list all the administration and the communities that you have been part of and you had a representative functionality. Anything representative where you showed a commitment to service, where you showed a commitment beyond yourself. And for our mid-career researchers, hi team, you are fabulous. Really hard time of your career, isn't it? This is the bit of the CV you have to work on, okay? Because in some ways the definition of a mid-career researcher is somebody who is able to transcend the self, me, and build communities and partnerships and collaboration and care for others. So, for all of you out there, always look for these opportunities. Let me give you a hint from an old lady. What you've got to do in your mid-career is you've got to move from what's often called operational administration, management and leadership and move to governance functionalities. Okay, often, and this is disgraceful, the operational stuff is referred to as the housework of universities. It's got to be done because it's the housework, but I need to also make sure that when an opportunity comes, and they're rare, when an opportunity comes for a governance role in research integrity, research ethics, academic ethics, anything like that, accountability, transparency, anything like that, you grab that opportunity because they are rare and they're precious and they look magnificent on the CV. And also, can I say, you are serving the discipline. You are serving the nation. You are serving international higher education, and thank you for doing that. Right. So at this point, we've done the really crucial stuff. Now we're sort of at the presentations and the conferences. Now you need to list the title, the date, the place and so forth. And most conferences these days have a URL. Those of you post-COVID, you might even have a Zoom link. You might even have a video of your presentation. Wow, put that stuff in. So they get a look at who you are and what you've done. Then, and we're nearing the end, then we move to the key heading, professional development. Okay. All the professional development that you've undertaken in your entire life goes here. Now, I'm well aware that, we're going to talk about the specificities, all the generic stuff, but the professional development section, make sure it's complete because we're going to use it for another purpose in a second. The final heading of your CV, so we're at the end now, please list your referees. Never put referees available via request. You're gone. You're out at that point. Have good, solid referees who stay with you forever and list them at the end of your CV. Thanks. Okay. Now, there are some more granular headings that you can incorporate as your career develops. So, for example, as you do capstone or honours or coursework master's supervision, you list those students and their title, year and organisation, and that often appears at the end of the teaching section. Sometimes your PhD supervision appears there as well. Sometimes it's after your publications. So the supervisory functionalities can often appear, I put mine, for example, at the end of the teaching section and before the research, okay? But you decide what creates the balance in your own CV. Then you get to the examination opportunities. This might be external examinations. So those of us, hello to everyone at the University of Mauritius, yay! Those of us that are doing external examination functionality, either of examining PhDs or doing whole of institution examination, that often appears again in between teaching and research, but can appear at the end of research. But that's a bespoke specialist heading. Okay, so you've now got all your headings for your chronological CV, living the dream. And you can see, probably with some horrific clarity, all the gaps that you have in your professional life. Now, don't be worried about that. Gaps are a gift. Say it with me. Gaps are a gift. And that's why we have this master mistress CV. This CV is a living document, okay? I started mine at 21. I am close to death, right? It is a living, dynamic document. And also, I still make sure that I add something to my CV every single week. Sometimes you have amazing weeks where every day something happens. Like, you can bet your life I've got these 10 articles out. About 4 of them are going to be accepted on one day and they require 24 hours of the approval of the proofs. But, every week I make sure I make something happen. And if you're really going for it, wow, something happens every day. So importantly, what I need you to do now is take a breath. and log the gaps. What do you need to fill? And if it is teaching, that's cool. That's cool. Add yourself to every teaching register that you can find. About a quarter of universities, 1 in 4, have this open call for a teaching register. So go to the institution, check, their jobs available stuff, but also check your particular department. So if, for example, you're an education academic or a social work academic, the actual department may have, an open call, a register of interest to be on their teaching register. Bite their hand off. Do a CV, cut it, do a chronological CV and send it to them. Get on that list. And trust me, as someone who was a former head of school, I used that teaching register once a week. Okay? What happens is you think you got this course all sorted, and then someone pulls out the week before semester and you are desperate and you go to the teaching register and you fill in that gap. And remember, online teaching, you can be anywhere in Australia, anywhere in Canada, anywhere in the US, anywhere, and we need an online tutor and you are available, you get that job. So please don't think you're on the register and nothing happens. Trust me, as a head of school, when I'm desperate, I live in that register, and a head of school is desperate most of the time. And that is a great way to beef out your teaching opportunities and for your functional CV, your skills. The diversity of the teaching skills that you have are crucial. Okay. So go into every university site, do that nice little cut of your CV and have a good go. Put yourself out there, living the dream. And of course, you also get a bit of dough while you're looking as well. As to research team, use the whiteboard method. We've done so many sessions on research planning, okay? I need you to go through every single seminar and conference you've ever done and make sure you have written a paper from that seminar or that conference. Write it up. Get all the PhD research out, all of it. I need you to squeeze that sponge. Okay. I also want you to think about teaching and learning publications, dead crucial. Think about SOTL, think about SOS, great. And just to do a shout out to my mate Christopher Young, my former PhD student, Dr. Christopher Young. Chris and I, of course, he did a PhD by prior publication, big contextual statement. So we've cut up that contextual statement into what we believe are 6, perhaps 7 articles. We've done the first one, it's been published. The second one is currently under review. So really, for those of you that are doing an artifact exegetical thesis or a PPP, really work that contextual statement in a different way. So wring that sponge. Think about nitros. This is the era of nitros. Think about video abstracts, think about doing podcasts, work that multimodality for me. All of this that we've talked about today is in your power. Everything we've talked about here, you have control over. Get up, finish that piece of research, send it out to referees. You have control over all of that. You have complete control over moving your publications through refereeing. So use that control. Now, if you're lacking something, particularly you find in early to mid researchers and colleagues, administration, management, leadership is lacking, then start to really focus on the community and student representative work. Fill that gap. It gives you skills. It also gives you connections. So remember, look at all your local community groups, look at the council, look at libraries, for example, dead crucial. And we're going to just sort of finish off the last bit today by looking at the great stocking filler of your CV. This is the quickest way to address any gaps. And it is, of course, professional development. Now, in your Master Mistress CV, I want you to list all the sessions that you did at your university during your degrees. And they're probably generic stuff, methodology and ethics and stuff, systematic reviews. That's great. Do all of that. But now this is a different moment in your PD experience. You have to be strategic. Look at the gaps in the CV and start to fill those gaps. And we now have a customized and bespoke strategy, a different strategy to fill those gaps. What skill, what competency do you need to demonstrate to get that job? So you need to start to fill those gaps up with certificate courses from Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, not a big fan of Udemy, but also IAP College. Okay, I have an annual subscription to Coursera, LinkedIn Learning and IAP, and I use them every single week. And I do at least one certificate course every single week. And it keeps me fresh. It also ensures that my CV continues to tick over. But it also ensures that I have a really dynamic system to match the requirements and opportunities that exist for me with the skills that I possess. It's also much cheaper to buy an annual subscription. So if you're in the sort of job seeking mode and you're needing to develop new skills quickly and codify them, that's not a bad suggestion. Okay, so at this point you have your master, your mistress CV. Every job you apply for, I need you to go into that CV and do a remix of it for the particular job that you're applying for. Never, ever, ever just have a PDF of your CV and go, oh yeah, that'll do, and send it off. That's rubbish. Never do that again. Here's a job. Here's my CV. How do I take stuff out, change some headings, add some headings, and make it work for that job? PDF it. Thanks for playing. Now, when you're writing your cover letter, I need you to make sure that the cover letter, which must address the selection criteria and the responsibilities, that the cover letter dances with the CV that you're going to submit. They must be in a rumba. They must move together. Okay. And if there is something, a skill that you don't possess, there are some jobs that say you need to use this particular bit of software. And you go, I've never heard of that bit of software, right? Don't panic. Go to Coursera, go to LinkedIn Learning, go to IAP and go, right, okay, I need to learn how to use this bit of software. Take a day, do a course in it, learn that bit of software. Some of the LinkedIn Learning ones on software take 45 minutes, okay? And then you've got a certification in that bit of software. Add that to the CV, mention it in your cover letter. Remember, you are competing with the world. You need to control what you can control. And you've got to use your CV at this point, for all of us really, as a diagnostic of your strengths and your weaknesses and be able to locate the gaps. Remember though, and this is as we start to move into the series, you are hired for a job, not for who you are, but for what you can do for that organisation. So this week, our homework, all of us, let's get our master mistress CV in place. And if you've had a CV for decades like me, and I'm doing this with you now, go through that CV and go, is this serving me anymore? Do I like the font? Are the headings of any use? Go in, fresh eyes, have a look at it. Now, that's your homework. And that's the task I want us all to work on before next week. But I want to try and just go meta right at the end for you while you're doing your homework. And I want to ask you 10 questions. These are deep and troubling. 10 questions for you to think about before we start our work next week. 1. What does a job mean for you? Is it just dough? Is it identity? Is it status? What does a job mean for you? What have you enjoyed or despised in your previous roles? 3, from the memory of that enjoyment or disgust, what do we learn about your strengths and your weaknesses? 4, how do you measure career success? 5, how do you measure career failure? 6, love this one, what are your indicators that you are producing good work in an organisation? 7, What do you find frightening in a workplace? 8, what strategies do you have in place to manage that fear? 9, here we go, don't get upset. 9, what are you prepared to lose to gain a job? And 10, what are your non-negotiable deal breakers in a job? So let's all do our homework and let's ponder our 10 questions. Keep in touch with me through the week. Let's do this. I wish you love, light and peace. Tea out.